So today what we're going to do is we are going to draw object number 1, and the first thing we want to check is we want to make sure that we are in the visible class when we're drawing visible lines, and that we're also on the orthographic layer. Another way to tell that is to see if your title block is grayed out. Once we're done drawing the object, we're going to take some time to go back into the title block layer and adjust it. For example, object here would be now object 1, and also the date would reflect today's date. So let's go ahead and draw this object. And I'm going to start with my top view because my top view is actually giving me the most information. So I'm going to take my rectangle tool and I'm going to draw my first rectangle. So that's 3.5 by 2 7/8. And if I do 2 7/8 and not negative 2 7/8, you're going to see that my rectangle pops up to the top there. If I just go ahead and verify that as being correct, I can drag that down into my drawing. From here, I'm going to draw my second rectangle, also in the visible class, and this one is going to be 2.5 by 1 7/8. You know what I'll do? We'll do this negative, so you can see what that does here. So you can see that that now stayed down as I drew that. And the last thing I want to draw on my top view is my circle, which is a 1/2 inch diameter. And if we do simple math there, we'll know that half of an inch is actually a 1/4 of an inch, so we'll do a 1/4 of an inch circle. Now it's time to put these objects together. So I'm going to go ahead and verify those things by their center point and by their left-hand side. And from here, I'm going to grab my line tool and I'm going to go to my guide class. And from here, I'm going to hold down my shift key. And while I'm holding down my shift key, I'm just going to go down to the edge of my printable area because I don't want it to go outside of my printable area in general. And then we'll do also my center line here. And then what I'm going to choose to do here is to just take my mouse and draw a guideline over to the right because I don't want it to disappear on the actual edge line of my object printable area or title block. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my 2D polygon tool to draw the next shape, and I'm going to start at that end point and I'm going to come up 3 inches. But before I even start doing all of that, it's probably good for me to change back to my visible class. So I'm in my 2D polygon tool in my visible class. I'm going to tab that over to 3 inches because it's 3 inches tall. I'm going to come over and I'm going to come down 3/4 of an inch. I don't need to know the over measurement because it's coming from my guidelines. And then I can just click that home. Now I'm going to take my line tools, going to the hidden class. I'm going to bring my hidden line across here. I'm also going to bring my hidden lines down for the exterior of my circle. And lastly, I'm going to select my center line. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go past my object with my center line on the bottom so that I can then hold down the shift key and use my arrow tools to bring that center line just slightly over top of my object and below my object. Let's Command 4 that real quick and bring that full screen. I'm now going to go back to my guide class, and now it's time to put in all of my other guidelines. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring my horizontal lines over from my front view, and then I'm also going to grab this and give myself a 45-degree angle. Holding down the shift key is really going to be important here to get my object to where I need it to go and keep my lines nice and straight. You're going to see that my object starts to take form here with these guidelines in my right view. And here I'm going to use my rectangle tool back in the visible class. And you know what, for all arguments here real quick, let's just say I stayed in my guide class and I wanted to draw this top object with my guide class. Uh-oh, I made a mistake, right? I have 2 choices. I can go back and I can delete this and I can draw it again with the visible class, or I can come up here in the actual object info and change that down here to the visible class, and it will automatically go to visible class. But before I draw the next thing, I need to go back up to my classes and change that back to visible. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my second line there. And you know me, I like to do things efficiently. So I'm going to grab these 3 lines together. I'm going to duplicate those 3 lines together and grab it by this top midpoint of my center line, and I'm just going to click that in over here. And because it's a circle, the hidden lines and the center lines will be identical. We got 2 more steps we need to do. We need to get rid of these guidelines, and we need to put in a center mark on my circle. So let's start by getting rid of the guidelines. So I'm going to go up to the View menu, and in the View menu, I'm going to bring that down to Class Options, and I'm going to go to Active Only, and I'm going to change this to Guide Class. Now selecting all, that's Command A, and deleting my guidelines, and then coming back up to View, down to Class Options, Show, Snap, Modify, Others. I'm going to now go to my center class because I want to put in a center mark. I'm going to come down here to the Dimensions and Notes tools. It's also known as Dims and Notes. If I click on that, it's going to change my tool set here, and in my tool set I'm going to go to the center mark, and when I have the circle highlighting red, that's my center mark. This takes us through the entire process. We want to make sure we're saving that. We want to make sure we're changing our title block, and we'll move on to object number 2.